All right, hello everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Star Wars Mark of Balance. My name is Mark, and today we're going to be talking about Episode 5 of Bad Batch Season 3. The episode title is The Return, and I already know what all of you guys are going to say. Mark, it was a Monster of the Week episode. Lay into it. And to that I'll say, I'm going to be a little bit of a hypocrite, because I think while I do agree with you, the Monster of the Week element was kind of an eye roll for me. We still can't seem to shake it, and my favorite line, other than the really good lines between Crosshair and Hunter, my favorite line from this episode was Wrecker when he's like, "Why is there always a giant monster?" And I'm like, yes, even they know this is ridiculous at this point. However, I do think the setting of returning to the outpost from Season 2, where Crosshair had his big turn and betrayal to the Empire, and just overall being one of the best episodes of the Bad Batch, it was so nice to be back. It was so nice to have this hashing out of differences between Crosshair and Hunter on such a seminal world to Crosshair's journey. And the Monster of the Week element, I understand it because, one, the whole crew's back together. You know, Echo's there, Crosshair's back in his old armor. Like, I understand they were probably trying to recapture maybe the magic that people felt about the first season. They really enjoyed those Adventure of the Weeks with the whole Bad Batch crew, but also they needed some story device to have Hunter and Crosshair be isolated and work together, and by working together, work out their differences. To me, of course, I always wish that they would think of more creative ways to do it outside of using a monster. I think there was a great moment for some really intense dialogue when Crosshair and Hunter are out kind of on the snow flat and they start getting into it. They're like, you know, Crosshair's on Hunter. He's like, you're the one that got Omega captured because I sent out a signal, but you didn't trust me. And Hunter's about to swing on him, and then it gets cut because the monster shows up. And I really wish, you know, maybe we would have another way of having them hash this out, similar to the Rebels episode where Callus and Zeb are stuck in the ice and they have to survive together, and they're both on different sides. You know, Callus is an ISB agent and Zeb is a rebel that they've been hunting. And through surviving together, just surviving the elements, not necessarily surviving a monster attack. Oh wait, maybe there was a monster in that episode. Hold on. Okay, yes, there was a monster in that Rebels episode. However, I do really think the dialogue of that episode stands out more, and I wish that in this episode, the dialogue was more forward than this ice worm that came out of nowhere, and very ironically came out a week after Dune, you know, a movie about sandworms, and now we have an ice worm here. You know, maybe that was part of their plan. Maybe they knew when Dune was releasing when they were making this. I don't know. Regardless, I do think this episode had a lot of great character moments that made the Monster of the Week element a lot smaller. It was not the main focus. The main focus was Crosshair returning to this planet that changed him, and the clones that were stranded here changed his perspective and forced him to look inside himself and say, hey, I need to leave the Empire. And I love the symbolism here. We see the vulture above his head again. I did a whole reel on this last year when Bad Batch Season 2 came out. In the episode The Outpost, I talked about how the vulture was war, and essentially that it comes for everyone. It doesn't discriminate. It comes for the good guys, the bad guys, and it represented what's going to happen to the clones and Crosshair if he stays on this path. So I love that they brought this symbolism back in this episode. I love those quiet moments when Crosshair saw the helmets of the clones that died on this outpost all strewn about, and he picks them up and pays respect to them, and Hunter sees that. He doesn't say anything, but he sees it, he acknowledges it, and he sees that, hey, maybe there has been a change in Crosshair, and maybe I can start to trust him again. And while I do think Hunter is usually a very one-note character, I liked the little dimension we got here with him being an overprotective father to the point where he got Omega captured. I really love that scene where Crosshair does call him out and says, you know, maybe to a good degree, Hunter had his reasons to be skeptical, of course, because Crosshair was hunting them at one point. But, you know, there was a part of Hunter that did fail Omega here. So we see another aspect to Hunter. He's not just the father that does the right thing every time. He does mess up. He does overextend his reach when trying to take care of Omega, and it got her locked up in Mount Tantis for I think they confirmed over 130 days or so almost half a year. And that's not math, a little less than half a year. But I really enjoyed that scene and the reconciliation at the end between Hunter and Crosshair. To back up a bit to the beginning of the episode, we open on Pabu. We're back on the Paradise Island that we ultimately see as the goal of the show. Like, we want the Bad Batch crew and all the other clones to eventually get to a place like Pabu where they can just live their lives free of war and just being at peace. They got a nice villa set up. We got the sunset in the background, the dinner with a view. Like, they are set up on Pabu. We see Crosshair is doing target practice, as I talked about last week. The shaky hand has been a theme throughout this season so far. We saw that he missed his shots last week, and we begin this week with him still doubting his ability to shoot. And he is down to like 50% or something like that on his accuracy, which is crazy for a sniper. So it is begging the question, what is Crosshair without his skill, and what makes him valuable in his own eyes? Him being a soldier, him being a sniper. It's something he mentioned in the last episode. He's like, let me use my skill set when he wants to go in guns blazing, and Omega's like, no, we can do it another way. Crosshair's mind is still wired like he is not a valuable being if he isn't at war. And seeing him going through this change, hopefully throughout the season, and realizing he doesn't have to be a good shot to be valuable as a being, it is really cool. And I'm excited to continue seeing this evolution. And what kicks off this episode is Omega and Crosshair have intel on Mount Tantis, and this signals to Rex and Echo that they need to get this intel from them. So Echo shows up, the whole crew is all back together. I still stand on the side that Echo has been very underutilized in this show. He's just been kind of a droid, essentially, and I feel like there's been a lot of opportunity to go deeper with him, especially with Rex, them talking about the 501st, what happened with the 501st, what happened to Fives, his brother that we saw throughout the Clone Wars. We never really get any dialogue like that with Echo, so while he is back, and I think he does have some moments throughout the series, I just wish we got more out of him, because he was always my favorite clone growing up. And just seeing him kind of be a side character with not much to contribute, I just think he deserves better. He's a veteran, and seeing him back is great, but I just don't think we're going to dive too much more into him. Hopefully I'm proven wrong, but they need to go to this, or any Imperial outpost, to plug in the data, and then when they plug in the data, it essentially bypasses the Imperial security, something like that. So Crosshair points them to the outpost that changed his life. So we go to the outpost, and immediately when they landed on the platform, I was taken right back to the episode, The Outpost, which is crazy because the episode is so minimal, and it's happening during a storm, so it's hard to really understand the environment. But the ending of that episode is so iconic in animation, and they did such a great job of establishing the setting that the moment they landed on the planet, I was like, oh wait, is this the outpost? And it was just like a barren shot of a landing pad with snow, and I somehow still connected the dots. So I love that they came back here, as I already said. Wrecker is quick to forgive Crosshair. He is a child. He's the most childlike of everyone, even more than Omega, and he's like, if Omega trusts him, then I trust him. So we don't get too much out of Wrecker, but he does give Crosshair his armor back, which was a nice moment. He's like, I hope it still fits. And I really like Omega's sassiness that she's had this season, this confidence in herself. She's always been an optimist, and she's always stuck up for what she believes in, but always came from like a naive perspective. But this season, she just feels a lot more mature. And when she calls out Crosshair, is like, I'm older than you. You're my little brother. Like, you guys need to stop fighting. Almost like that familial dynamic they always talk about. But this felt real because she was an older sister. Weird to say, but she's the older sister. And she's like, you two need to work it out. And Crosshair's like, well, he started it. So even though Hunter and Crosshair are these grizzled war veterans, they're still emotionally stunted as people. They're not mature, and Omega is not more mature than them because she has less life experience, but these guys are only good at war, and they're still learning how to be people and not soldiers. That's been the whole point of the show. And Omega's kind of been young enough to not live in that world, but not exactly have the galaxy-wide view of having experiences outside other than being with the Bad Batch and experiencing their war. And Pabu is kind of the only sanctuary she's really had. So it is cool to see them back there. I know I jumped around like every which way with this, but those are my main thoughts on this episode. Yes, Monster of the Week, not thrilled about that. Wish they would come up with more creative ways to add conflict to episodes through dialogue and less on just throwing a monster in the middle to supplement any tension they would have through dialogue. But as I mentioned, it was a small portion of the episode. The bigger portions of the episode that stand out to me are Crosshair returning to this outpost, Hunter and him hashing out what happened last season and how Omega got captured, and seeing the motif and theme of the vulture return. And by the end of the episode, the vulture leaves. It goes up to the mountain. It doesn't circle anymore, like it's looking for prey. And this kind of symbolizes Crosshair accepting that he doesn't want to be a soldier, or he is on the path to not being a soldier for the rest of his life. He's finally letting go of that, and the vulture is no longer circling over his head. It's also moving on to the mountaintop and climbing the mountain. And you can almost see that as a metaphor for, Crosshair climbing the mountain of recovery and reconciliation with his own choices. So really loved some of the symbolism here. Not a bad Monster of the Week episode. Had a lot of character moments. Looking forward to next week. Those are my main thoughts. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. If you enjoyed the Bad Batch episode, let me know on my Instagram at @star_wars_mark of balance. Would love to talk Bad Batch or Star Wars animation or any Star Wars. If you enjoyed this episode here, leave a rating on whatever streaming service you're listening to it on. I really appreciate it. If you know anyone that likes Star Wars, friends, family, whoever, let them know. Have them come on down and listen to me talk and analyze some Star Wars. Would really appreciate it. And as always, thank you guys so much for listening. Stay safe, stay healthy, and may the Force be with you. Peace.